How to sell anything to anyone. Introduction. Sales as the hidden power that governs your life. Imagine for a moment that you wake up tomorrow and, as if by magic, all your selling skills disappear. You can't convince your boss to approve your project, your team won't follow your vision, and you can't even negotiate a better price when buying something. Sounds extreme, right? But deep down, it's a silent reality most people don't recognize. Life is built on constant acts of selling. We sell when we apply for a job and need to convince a recruiter that we're the best choice. We sell when we explain an innovative idea to a partner, or when we want to inspire a friend to join our project. We even sell when we want our partner to agree on a trip or a family decision. And yet, many people look at the word sales with rejection, as if it were something manipulative or exclusive to those who work in commerce. This misconception is the first major obstacle we must overcome. The mistake of thinking that selling is only for salespeople has left millions of people trapped in professional and financial mediocrity. Brilliant ideas never see the light because their creators don't know how to present them clearly and persuasively. Skilled professionals lose job opportunities simply because they didn't know how to sell themselves in an interview. Entrepreneurs with top-quality products fail to reach the market because they don't master the art of communicating value. And this is where this audiobook becomes a transformative tool. Because it's not about teaching you to manipulate or pressure people. It's about showing you how to influence ethically, powerfully, and positively, using a skill you already use every day, though unconsciously. Think about a simple example. A mother wants her child to eat more vegetables. If she just says, "Eat them because I said so," she'll probably face resistance. But if she learns how to sell the idea, she might turn it into a game. Did you know superheroes eat spinach because it makes them stronger? If you want the energy to run faster than your friends, these veggies will help. Suddenly, what was an order becomes a story with clear benefits, and the child agrees with a smile. That too is selling. Presenting a message in a way that sparks interest and drives voluntary action. Selling is not about pressure. It's about communicating value irresistibly. Now imagine applying this concept to your professional life. Think of an engineer with an innovative idea to reduce costs in his company. If he just submits a dry technical report, it may go unnoticed. But if he develops his sales skills, he can turn that presentation into a story that shows how the company will save money, how those savings can translate into better salaries or benefits for the team, and how his proposal positions him as a visionary leader within the organization. The result? A simple idea now has impact, gains support, and secures funding. This is what happens when you master sales. Your ideas stop being invisible and start producing real results. Many people associate sales with manipulation because they've had bad experiences with pushy salespeople who only care about their commission. But true selling is not about deception. It's about connecting with someone's real needs and offering an honest solution that improves their life. For example, a good financial advisor doesn't sell you a savings plan just to meet a quota. He sells it because he knows you want to give your kids a college education, because he understands you want to retire and travel stress-free, because he recognizes you're looking for peace of mind in case of emergencies. The product is just a vehicle. The real outcome is both emotional and practical. That's selling with purpose. This audiobook is designed to help you uncover that hidden dimension of sales that's present in everything you do. Each chapter will provide you with practical tools to eliminate the fear of selling, communicate persuasively, handle objections with confidence, and close agreements that benefit both you and the people you interact with. You don't need a job title with the word sales on your business card to apply what you'll learn here. In fact, the greatest transformation will happen to those who never saw themselves as salespeople, because the change will be more dramatic. They'll go from feeling insecure and invisible to gaining confidence and influence. Let me tell you another short story that illustrates this hidden power. A few years ago, I met a young programmer who was extremely talented but couldn't get a raise. He complained that his boss didn't value his work. I asked him, "What have you done to sell your value within the company?" He was silent. The truth is, he expected his work to speak for itself. But in a competitive world, value must be communicated. I trained him on how to prepare a clear proposal, present his achievements with measurable results, and link his talents to the company's strategic goals. The outcome: a 40% salary increase in less than 3 months and a leadership position. His talent was already there. Selling it was the missing piece. And this, dear listener, is what you too can achieve when you master the art of influencing without manipulating. This audiobook doesn't aim to turn you into someone who pressures others, but into someone who inspires. By the end, I want you to see every human interaction as an opportunity to connect, to create value, and to build relationships where both sides win. If you've ever felt your ideas were good but nobody listened, if you have a business you know could help more people but you can't reach them, or if you simply want to communicate with more clarity and confidence, then this journey is for you. Because selling isn't just about closing deals, it's about opening doors, building trust, and getting others to see the world the way you see it and want to join you on that path. And when you master sales, you don't just gain more income or clients. You gain influence, respect, and most importantly, the power to turn your vision into reality. Welcome to this experience. Buckle up, because what you'll learn here has the potential to change your professional life, your relationships, and the way you communicate with the world. But before we continue, drop a comment telling me which city you're listening from. And if this message is resonating with you, hit that subscribe button now so you don't miss any content that feeds your mind and brings you closer every day to the life you truly deserve. There's no time to waste. Let's continue. Chapter number 1. Everything begins with a belief. Yes, I can sell. When we talk about selling, most people think first of techniques, strategies, and the words they should say. However, the true foundation of success in sales doesn't begin with what you do, but with what you believe about yourself and about the act of selling. This first chapter is essential because we will focus on that invisible root, your mindset. If your mind is programmed to avoid rejection, if you think selling is uncomfortable or even unworthy, you can learn every technique in the world and still feel resistance. On the other hand, if you develop the firm belief that selling is serving, that you can do it, and that it's a skill that improves with practice, then the path to success in sales becomes a much more natural and rewarding experience. Let's think of a concrete example. Two people offer the same product, at the same price, with the same quality. The first person thinks, I hope the customer doesn't reject me. I don't want to seem pushy. The second person thinks, my product can improve this customer's life. If I don't share it, I'm taking away an opportunity for growth. Who do you think will succeed? It's not the product that makes the difference, but the mindset behind the presentation. And this applies to every aspect of life. Even if you don't have a physical product, when you're job hunting, you're selling your experience. When you're looking for a partner, you're selling your personality and values. When you lead a team, you're selling your vision. That's why everything begins with a belief. Yes, I can sell. Some people believe good salespeople are born with talent. They think someone with charisma, eloquence, or superior social skills has a natural advantage. But the truth is, most great salespeople were ordinary people who changed their beliefs. They realized they could learn and practice these skills, just like learning to play an instrument or drive a car. A common limiting belief is, I'm not good with people, or I can't convince anyone. If you repeat that in your mind every day, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Change begins with a different declaration. I can learn, I can improve, I can sell because I can help. That's the seed of a new identity. You no longer see yourself as someone who avoids selling, but as someone who feels comfortable and even enjoys the process. Fear of rejection is one of the most common blocks. Why are we so afraid of a no? Deep down, we associate that no with a personal criticism. We believe they're rejecting our worth, our ability, even our identity. But the reality is that most of the time, a no has nothing to do with you. Sometimes it's bad timing. Sometimes the person doesn't have the budget. Sometimes they're simply not ready for change. If you take it personally, every objection will set you back. On the contrary, if you see it as part of the process, you can keep moving forward with confidence. A clear example comes from great athletes. A basketball player may miss 10 shots, but still takes the 11th with the same energy. Sales work the same way. A no isn't failure. It's just one more step toward the next yes. To change your relationship with rejection, you need to train your mind. Here's a simple but powerful exercise. Set a weekly goal of receiving at least 10 no's. Yes, you read that right. Go after no. Why? Because by doing so, you take away rejection's power. You realize the world doesn't collapse when you hear a no, and at the same time, you increase your chances of hearing a yes. Many beginner salespeople who try this exercise are surprised to find that, in the process of seeking 10 rejections, they end up closing 3 or 4 sales they wouldn't have otherwise. The shift in perspective is huge. Instead of fearing no, you begin to see it as an ally, as a sign that you're taking action. Another fundamental aspect is identity. The real question you should ask is not, how do I sell? But, who am I when I sell? If you identify as someone who avoids conflict and shrinks away from discomfort, your behavior will follow that pattern. But if you build a different identity, for example, I'm someone who creates opportunities and helps others make better decisions, your behavior will automatically align with that vision. This isn't about lying to yourself. It's about seeing sales as an extension of your personal purpose. A person selling a language course, for example, isn't just offering classes. They're offering the possibility for someone to get better jobs, enjoy richer travel experiences, and build international friendships. An insurance agent isn't just selling policies. They're selling peace of mind and security for a family. When you understand the value you bring, the feeling of bothering disappears and is replaced with a sense of mission. Overcoming the fear of no also requires understanding the value of yes. Every sale is, in fact, a concrete form of help. Think of a doctor recommending a treatment. Do they apologize for suggesting it? Of course not, because they know they're helping. In the same way, if you believe your product, your idea, or your service can improve someone's life, then you have a responsibility to communicate it clearly. Imagine having a vaccine that could save lives, but deciding not to talk about it because you're afraid of rejection. Wouldn't that be absurd? The same applies to your ideas or business. If you don't talk about them, you're depriving someone of a potential solution. A practical strategy to begin transforming your identity is to create daily affirmations related to your ability to sell. For example, I'm someone who brings value with every interaction. Every conversation is an opportunity to help. Rejection doesn't define me, it just redirects me to the right client. These statements, repeated with intention, start to reprogram your inner dialogue. And this isn't just theory. Psychology studies show that positive self-declaration strengthens your sense of control and improves resilience against stress, something essential in the sales dynamic. Remember that selling is not an isolated act. It's a reflection of your ability to communicate, inspire, and connect with others. If your belief is that selling is something uncomfortable, your body, your tone of voice, and your energy will transmit that. But if your belief is that selling is helping, your body language will open up, your tone will be warmer, and people will notice. This explains why some salespeople, even without much technical experience, close more deals than others with years of training. Because their mindset makes them magnetic. That's why everything begins with a belief. Yes, I can sell. When you change your perception of what selling means and your ability to do it, you begin to see opportunities where you once saw obstacles. In the next chapters, you'll learn the practical tools to turn this mindset into concrete habits. But without this inner foundation, any technique will feel forced. Starting today, stop seeing yourself as someone who avoids sales, and start seeing yourself as someone who creates opportunities. Because the world needs what you have to offer, and the first step to sharing it with confidence is believing you can do it. Chapter number 2. The salesperson who sells themselves first. Before selling anything, you must first sell yourself. And this is not about being arrogant or projecting a false image. It's about developing genuine self-confidence, the kind that can be felt, noticed, and naturally generates credibility. The truth is, nobody buys from someone they don't trust. And the very first signal of trust a client perceives isn't in your words, but in how you present yourself. It's in your tone of voice, your posture, your energy. Think about the last time you spoke with someone who was unsure about what they were offering. They hesitated, avoided eye contact, their tone of voice was weak. Did they inspire confidence? Probably not. Now think about the time someone spoke to you with conviction, clarity, and certainty. Even if you didn't make a purchase right then, they surely earned your respect. That difference wasn't in the product, but in how that person sold themselves first. Self-confidence doesn't mean you'll never have doubts. It means that despite them, you still project security in your purpose. A salesperson who sells themselves first knows their product or service has value, but above all, believes in their ability to convey that value. When your mind is full of insecurity, your body reflects it immediately. Your shoulders slump, your gaze drifts away, your tone of voice lowers. This isn't theory, it's biology. Posture directly influences emotional state, and emotional state impacts how others perceive your credibility. That's why selling begins with something deeper than a script. It begins with your inner state. There's a very simple exercise that completely changes how others perceive you. Before an important meeting, interview, or call, stand tall, stretch your arms out to the sides, expand your chest, take deep breaths, and hold that posture for 2 minutes. This sends signals of power to your brain, raises testosterone levels, the hormone linked to confidence, and lowers cortisol, the stress hormone. When you walk into that meeting afterward, you won't just feel different, you'll be seen differently. People sense your energy before they hear a single word. And that brings us to a crucial point. Your energy, posture, and tone are your silent tools of influence. Here's a real example. I once met a real estate agent who had the exact same portfolio as her colleagues. Same properties, same prices, even the same ads. Yet she closed twice as many deals as the others. Why? Because she projected absolute confidence in the way she spoke and moved. She never tried to pressure anyone into buying. She simply radiated belief in what she was offering. Her smile was warm, her gestures calm, her answers clear. She had sold herself first. She believed she was competent, she believed her properties had value, and she believed she could help each client find their ideal home. That belief came through in every interaction, and her clients felt it. Selling yourself first doesn't mean pretending to be someone you're not. It means highlighting your strengths and showing your genuine commitment to helping the client. One of the most effective ways to do this is by mastering knowledge of your product or service. When you know exactly what you're offering, every detail, every benefit, every possible objection, your confidence grows naturally. For example, imagine a barista who not only prepares coffee but also knows where each bean comes from, how it's roasted, and how that impacts its final flavor. When they speak with a customer, that passion and knowledge convey authority, and the sale flows more easily. The same applies to you. Deep knowledge and belief in your purpose make you magnetic. Another key element of selling yourself first is managing your inner language. The way you talk to yourself directly affects the energy you project. If, before a presentation, you think, "I hope I don't mess this up," your body will show tension and your tone will sound uncertain. But if you think, "I'm here to help, to provide value, to share something I know can make a difference," the change is remarkable. You don't need to say those words out loud to the client. They'll feel it in how you speak and how you look at them. Your voice deserves a chapter of its own in your personal development. The tone in which you speak communicates more than your words. A monotone voice conveys boredom or disinterest. Speaking too quickly can signal nervousness. A firm, steady, enthusiastic tone communicates conviction. And volume matters too. Speaking too softly can seem insecure, while shouting creates resistance. The key is finding a middle ground where your voice is clear and intentional. If you don't feel comfortable with your voice, there are breathing and reading aloud exercises that can help you improve. Many successful salespeople practice daily in front of a mirror or record themselves to refine their tone and body language. Now let's talk about first impressions. Studies show that in the first 7 seconds of an interaction, a person forms an initial opinion about you. 7 seconds. That means before you explain your product, before you present your arguments, people have already perceived your confidence, your attitude, and your presence. That's why the work of selling yourself first doesn't begin at the moment of your presentation. It begins much earlier, in how you prepare, how you walk into the room, how you shake hands, or how you greet someone on a video call. Here's a practical tip. Take care of your personal image. This doesn't mean wearing expensive clothes, but showing professionalism and consistency. Dressing appropriately for your sales context shows respect for yourself and for your client. Even small details, a genuine smile, direct eye contact, a firm handshake, create an immediate positive impression. All of this connects to selling yourself first. If you don't show security and self-respect, how can you expect others to believe in you and what you're offering? Remember, people don't just buy products, they buy experiences and emotions. And you are the first component of that experience. Imagine going to a restaurant where the waiter arrives looking bored, slouched, and speaking with a dull tone when taking your order. Even if the food is good, the experience won't excite you. Now imagine a waiter who greets you with a smile, welcomes you warmly, and answers your questions with enthusiasm. You'll probably feel better cared for and even more willing to tip generously. In both cases, the menu is the same. What changed was the energy of the person presenting it. You are the waiter of your ideas, your products, and your services, and your energy shapes the customer's experience. Finally, selling yourself first means being consistent. It's not enough to appear confident at the beginning. You must back that confidence with actions. If you promise something, deliver it. If you say you'll call at a specific time, do it. Every fulfilled commitment strengthens your credibility and positions you as someone trustworthy. And this is key, because trust is built in small doses but can be lost with a single mistake. Your personal reputation is your most powerful business card, and every successful salesperson knows it. It's not just about today's sale, it's about the relationship that could last for years. In the end, remember this, every time you walk into a sales interaction, ask yourself first, have I sold myself already? If your answer is yes, if you're convinced of your value, your abilities, and the positive impact of what you're offering, then you'll project that confidence naturally. People trust those who trust themselves, and you can develop that confidence starting today. With practice, with discipline, and with a mindset that selling is not about deceiving, but about helping. Sell yourself first, and the rest of the process will become much easier and more effective. Chapter number 3. Understand the client better than they understand themselves. Understanding the client better than they understand themselves is one of the most powerful secrets in the world of sales. Many people believe their job is to convince, to push a product or service until the client says, yes. But the truth is that effective selling is not about pushing, it's about discovering. It's about understanding the client's motivations, fears, and desires, even when they don't clearly express them. Because although people think they know what they want, they often aren't aware of their deeper needs. And when you are able to uncover those needs and offer the right solution, the sale becomes natural, almost inevitable. Let's think about a simple example. A customer walks into a store saying, I want a cheap phone. If the salesperson just fulfills that literal request, they'll probably show the cheapest model available and close a small sale. But if the salesperson listens carefully, asks questions, and observes, they may discover that what this customer really needs is a reliable phone for work, with good battery life and a decent camera because they make deliveries and take photos of their products. Suddenly, price is no longer the top priority. The customer is willing to invest a bit more if it makes their daily life easier. In other words, the client came in asking for a cheap phone, but what they actually needed was a functional phone that helps them be more productive. If the salesperson understands that better than the client themselves, the perceived value of the sale multiplies. Listening to the client goes far beyond just hearing their words. Listening is an active act that requires full attention, strategic questions, and the ability to read between the lines. When someone tells you, I need something fast, what does that really mean? Do they want speed because of a specific urgency? Or because they fear complicated processes? When a client says, I'm not sure, is it a doubt about the price, the quality, or simply fear of change? Learning to decode these signals transforms an average salesperson into a trusted advisor. And here lies the key difference. An average salesperson talks more than they listen. An excellent salesperson listens so deeply that when they do speak, their words feel like a natural response to the client's own thoughts. One of the most powerful tools to understand the client is observation. The way a person moves, their facial expression when you mention a price, the tone they use when talking about their problems. All of that gives you clues about what truly matters to them. For example, if a client shows interest in a product but leans back when hearing the price, it may mean that the value is still unclear in their mind. If you ignore that, you lose the sale. But if you notice it and respond empathetically, for example, I understand, the price may seem high at first. Would you like me to show you how this product can actually save you money in the long run? Then you connect with the client's true concern, the fear of spending without seeing a clear return. Another way to read between the lines is to pay attention to the emotional words the client uses. If someone says, I don't want to go through the same thing as last time, their priority is not price or speed, but safety and trust. A good salesperson detects that emotion and adjusts their message. I understand, and that's exactly why our service is designed to prevent those kinds of negative experiences. At that moment, the client feels that you've understood something beyond the surface. They feel heard, validated, and understood. That feeling is far more powerful than any discount. But how do you achieve that deep understanding? First, By asking questions. Questions open doors that assumptions close. Instead of assuming you know what the client needs, ask, what's most important to you right now? What problem are you hoping to solve with this product? What hasn't worked for you in the past? These questions not only give you valuable information, they also build trust because the client perceives that you care about their particular situation. Second, you need to practice active listening, which means not interrupting, avoiding thinking about your reply while the other person speaks, and most importantly, confirming what you understood. If I understand correctly, your main concern is the product's durability, right? This is not a manipulation tactic. It's a way of showing respect for the client's perspective. It's essential to understand that many people don't know how to clearly explain what they want because they've never stopped to analyze it. You can be the person who helps them clarify their own need. A classic example happens in real estate. A client says, I want a 3-bedroom house. But by digging deeper you discover that what they really want is a comfortable space to work from home and a play area for their children. Maybe the solution is not a bigger house but a different layout, or a location close to a park. If you stick only to the literal request, you'll show them 3-bedroom houses without considering functionality. But if you listen to what they truly want, comfort, remote work, safety for their children, you can present options they hadn't even imagined. That creates gratitude and a powerful emotional connection. We must get rid of the idea that selling is about pushing products. Selling is about helping people make decisions that improve their lives. When you understand the client better than they understand themselves, you don't have to force anything. The sale flows naturally because the person feels that finally, someone truly understood them. That's why many top-performing salespeople consider themselves consultants or advisors, not just intermediaries. They don't see the client as a number, but as a human being with specific needs, dreams, fears, and aspirations. And when you connect at that human level, sales turn into relationships built on trust. A practical recommendation is to begin each interaction with a different goal. Instead of trying to sell something, try to learn something. Ask yourself, what can I discover about this person that will help them make the best decision? That shift in mindset moves you away from the stereotype of the pushy salesperson and closer to the ideal of the trusted advisor. Plus, practicing this habit develops your emotional intelligence, one of the most valuable skills not only in sales but in any area of life. In the end, understanding the client better than they understand themselves is an act of empathy. It's recognizing that people buy for emotional reasons, and your role is to help them clearly see how your solution fits into their life. This not only increases your sales but also makes you someone valuable, someone people seek when they need guidance. In a world where everyone wants to sell but few take the time to truly listen, you can stand out by being the one who uncovers needs and guides toward real solutions. That is the essence of ethical, powerful, and lasting sales. Chapter number 4. Emotions decide, logic justifies. Emotions decide, and logic justifies. This is one of the most powerful, and at the same time, most overlooked truths in the world of sales. For a long time, many people have tried to sell purely through logic, presenting data, technical features, and price comparisons, as if customers were machines making decisions rationally and objectively. But the reality is very different. Most buying decisions, around 90% according to various neuroscience studies, are emotional. We buy because something makes us feel good, safe, special, important, or connected, and only afterward do we use logic to justify the decision we already made with our hearts. Let's think of a simple example. A car. Rationally, any car that takes you from point A to point B fulfills its function. However, most people don't choose based solely on fuel efficiency or engine durability. They choose because a model makes them feel successful, adventurous, safe, or even admired by others. Then, they justify that choice with phrases like, "It just performs better," or "It's safer for the family," even though the emotional decision was made long before. This pattern repeats across all markets. Fashion, technology, food, services, even in products as basic as a toothbrush. People don't buy products. They buy how those products make them feel. So, how can you awaken that desire, that urgency, and that emotional connection? The first step is to understand the key emotion driving your customer. Different products trigger different emotions. Life insurance isn't sold through adventure. It's sold through protection and peace of mind. A beach vacation isn't sold through the logic of miles traveled, but through the emotion of freedom, relaxation, and family happiness. Time-saving software isn't sold through the number of features, but through the emotion of feeling less stressed and more in control of life. If you can identify that primary emotion, your message will be much more powerful. A very useful technique to connect with the right emotion is storytelling. Stories allow the client to picture themselves using your product or service in a desired situation. For example, instead of saying, "Our financial advisory service offers a 10% annual return," you could say, "Imagine that in 5 years your savings allow you to make the down payment on that dream house, or pay for your children's college without worries." That image creates an immediate emotional connection. The customer is no longer thinking about percentages. They are feeling the relief and security of a stable future. Another way to spark emotions is by asking evocative questions. Instead of overwhelming with technical features, ask, "How would it feel to finally solve this problem once and for all?" Or, "What would it mean for you to have more free time each week?" These questions don't just invite reflection. They force the client to visualize a desired outcome, activating the emotions tied to the purchase. Once those emotions are triggered, your job is to show how your product or service makes them real. Now, let's talk about urgency. Many people postpone purchase decisions not because they don't want the product, but because they don't feel the immediate need. Your role as a salesperson is not to pressure aggressively, but to help the customer see the consequences of not acting. For example, if you sell health insurance, you could say, "I know you may think you can wait, but the moment you need insurance never comes with a warning. And when an emergency happens, it's too late to decide." These kinds of messages don't seek to instill manipulative fear, but to make the customer aware that every decision has an opportunity cost. When people realize that the emotional benefit can be lost if they don't act now, desire turns into action. Here's a real case. A business management software company was struggling to close sales because their team focused exclusively on technical data. One day, they shifted their approach and began sharing real customer stories. Business owners who regained hours of their week thanks to automation, who could spend more time with their families, or who grew without feeling overwhelmed. That shift, from logic to emotion, increased their sales by 40% in less than 3 months. The product was the same, but the emotional narrative made it irresistible. You must understand that awakening emotions is not manipulation. It is highlighting the human value behind the decision. Manipulation is lying or pressuring to gain at the customer's expense. Awakening emotions is showing the customer what they can achieve, how they can feel better, safer, happier, or more fulfilled with your solution. When you do this with honesty and ethics, you build a genuine connection that fosters trust and loyalty. Another powerful technique to connect with the right emotions is using testimonials. When a potential customer hears someone else describe how they felt using your product, an immediate identification mechanism is activated. If it worked for them and they feel that good, I can experience it too. For example, if you sell personal development programs, a testimonial like, "Before taking this course, I felt stuck and afraid of public speaking. Now I present my ideas with confidence, and my income increased by 30%, is far more persuasive than any list of program topics. The emotional result, feeling confident, free from fear, is what truly moves the customer. The final key is to remember that logic is still important, but not at the start of the process. Logic serves to reassure the customer about their emotional decision. After awakening desire, urgency, and emotional connection, use logic to back up that decision. Technical features, warranties, case studies, price comparisons. Logic is the mental permission customers give themselves to move forward without feeling impulsive. But the engine, the true fuel of the decision, is emotion. If you adopt this approach, you'll notice how sales conversations change. They stop being debates over prices or features and turn into dialogues about dreams, solutions, and desired emotional states. When you help a customer imagine how their life will improve thanks to your product or service, the sale stops feeling like a transaction and becomes a transformational experience. And that, precisely, is the foundation of any long-lasting business relationship. Chapter number 5. The Art of Asking Questions That Sell. Selling is not about talking endlessly or bombarding the client with data. The true art of selling lies in asking the right questions, the kind that open doors where a rigid sales pitch never could. Questions, when used with intention, not only generate information but also create connection and, most importantly, trust. The client doesn't feel interrogated. Instead, They feel guided with wisdom toward a solution that truly fits their life. That's why a great salesperson is also a great questioner, a master of conversation who knows how to listen, guide, and uncover what the client often doesn't even know how to express. There's a big difference between interrogating and guiding with questions. Interrogating is firing off quick, cold questions as if you were filling out a form. What's your budget? When do you plan to buy? What features do you want? This kind of questioning can make the client feel uncomfortable, defensive, or even manipulated. Guiding with questions, on the other hand, is an art. It's about asking open, friendly, discovery-oriented questions, designed to uncover real needs, not to trap the client into giving you a convenient answer. For example, instead of asking, "Are you buying today, yes or no?" you might ask, "What do you value most in this type of product?" That simple shift changes the entire tone of the conversation. Now the client feels you're there to understand, not to pressure. The right questions work because they spark reflection. Many times, clients come in with only a superficial idea of what they need. They haven't deeply thought about why they need it or how it impacts their life. Questions like, "What main problem are you hoping to solve with this solution?" Or, "What would happen if this problem stayed the same for the next 6 months?" invite the client to analyze their priorities. And while they reflect, they're giving you valuable information that allows you to connect your product or service with their real need, not just a surface-level perception. A powerful framework for building questions that sell is the SPIN methodology, created by Neil Rackham, which has become a classic of consultative selling. SPIN stands for situation, problem, implication, and need payoff. You start with situation questions to understand the context. How are you currently managing this aspect? Then move to problem questions. What challenges have you faced with your current method? Followed by implication questions. How do these problems affect your daily results or peace of mind? And finally, need payoff questions. If you could solve that problem quickly and safely, what would change for you? This structure transforms an ordinary conversation into a mutual discovery process where the client ends up recognizing their own need and seeing your proposal as the best solution. Here's a real example. A medical equipment salesperson visited a clinic where the director had already decided to buy a cheaper competitor's model. Instead of trying to convince him outright, the salesperson began asking questions. How many patients do you handle daily in this department? What's been the biggest difficulty with your current equipment? What impact has that issue had on patient experience or waiting times? As the director answered, he realized on his own that the cheaper model wouldn't meet their long-term needs. If it failed or lacked capacity, it would negatively impact patient care. The salesperson never criticized the competition. He simply guided the client to conclude for himself that he needed a more robust machine, the very one he was offering. The sale closed without pressure, purely through the power of questions. Another key aspect is that the right questions uncover hidden obstacles. Sometimes a client seems undecided but won't openly say why. It could be fear of the price, a bad past experience, or the influence of someone else in the decision. If you just talk and don't ask, you'll never discover the real block. But with questions like, what would make you feel completely confident moving forward with this decision? Or, have you had past experiences that make you hesitate about this option? You can identify the true obstacle and address it. Many times, the barrier isn't what the client says, "It's too expensive," but what they feel, "I don't want to make a mistake." When you identify that feeling and provide reassurance, the sale opens up naturally. The order of your questions also matters. You can't start by asking very personal or overly direct questions, or you'll create resistance. It's like climbing a staircase. Begin with light questions that build trust, then move to deeper needs, and finally address blocks and urgency. For example, if you sell fitness coaching, you might start with, what motivated you to think about improving your physical condition? Then go deeper. How have you been feeling about your energy levels lately? And finally, what do you think is stopping you from achieving those results on your own? This flow creates openness and collaboration. Here's a practical tip. Listen more than you talk. The ideal ratio in a sales conversation is 70% listening and 30% talking. And when you do talk, do it to clarify or guide, not to fill the silence with unnecessary information. There's a saying in sales, the one who asks the questions controls the conversation. Not because they manipulate it, but because they direct attention toward what really matters, solving the client's problem. Finally, Remember that questions are not just a closing tool, they're a relationship-building tool. When a client feels that someone truly takes the time to understand them, it creates an emotional bond that can last for years. That person no longer sees you as just a salesperson but as an ally. And once you become an ally, you don't just close a single sale. You open the door to referrals, renewals, and long-term loyalty. The art of asking questions that sell is, at its core, the art of listening and guiding. And like any art, it improves with practice. Start preparing your questions before each meeting, but also develop the skill to ask them on the spot, based on what you hear and observe. Because every client is different, and every situation requires flexibility. Once you master this art, sales stop being a battle of arguments and instead become a shared journey toward a solution the client feels is truly their own. That is the power of asking wisely. Chapter number 6. Active listening. Selling without talking too much. In sales, many people believe that success comes from talking non-stop, filling every silence with data, advantages, comparisons, and arguments. But the truth is that great salespeople master something much more powerful, the art of listening. And I don't mean polite listening, nodding while the client speaks just so you can later deliver your pitch. I'm talking about active, deep listening that makes the client feel truly understood. This skill is so powerful that it can build more trust than any flawless argument. Because when someone feels listened to, their defenses go down, they open up emotionally, and they become far more willing to consider what you have to offer. Silence, often seen as uncomfortable, becomes a sales tool when used correctly. Imagine a client saying, "I'm not sure this service is what I need." The typical reaction of an inexperienced salesperson is to rush in, explain, and fill the space with justifications. But an experienced salesperson knows how to use silence. They pause, nod empathetically, and if necessary, gently ask, "Which part makes you unsure?" That controlled silence gives the client space to process, to speak more, and to reveal their real concerns. Many of the best discoveries in a sale come from that silent space where the client feels invited to open up. Active listening is not simply staying quiet. It's showing the client that you are 100% present. One of the most effective techniques is steady but relaxed eye contact, nodding gestures, and small verbal cues like, "I see," "right," or "Yes, I understand." These signals show that you are present, not just hearing, but truly listening. And here comes another key technique, reflecting. Reflecting doesn't mean repeating word for word, but summarizing what the client just expressed to confirm that you understood. For example, if the client says, "I'm worried because I already tried a similar system and it didn't work," you could reply, "So, what worries you most is investing time and money in something that could end up like last time, correct?" This kind of response creates instant validation. The client feels that someone finally understands their fear. Another powerful tool of active listening is validating the client's emotions. When someone shares a problem or frustration and you acknowledge it without judgment, you build an emotional bond. For example, if a client says, "I'm frustrated because they always promise me solutions and never deliver," you could respond, "I understand your frustration. It's completely normal to feel that way after going through those experiences. You haven't sold anything yet, but you've gained something far more important, their trust. And once trust is there, influence follows naturally." A practical example. A financial advisor worked with clients who were very reluctant to invest because they had lost money before. Instead of overwhelming them with charts and performance data, she applied active listening. She asked them to explain exactly what happened, how they felt, and what fears they had now. She didn't interrupt, she just listened and validated their emotions. That must have been very difficult for you. After this deep listening, the client was much more open to hearing solutions because they felt someone finally understood them and wasn't going to minimize their past experiences. The result, not only did she close sales, but she built long-term trust relationships. Active listening also means paying attention to what is not being said. Often a client won't directly state their doubts, but their body language or tone of voice reveals them. They may say, "I like it," with a weak smile or crossed arms, which really means they still have reservations. If you're not listening actively, including those nonverbal signals, you may miss a golden opportunity to ask, "It seems like something is still on your mind. Would you like us to go over it together?" This level of attention creates a connection that most salespeople never achieve because they're too busy preparing their next argument. One useful technique is to strategically repeat some of the client's keywords. For instance, if a client says, "What I need is something reliable because I've already had bad experiences," you can respond, "Reliable, that's the most important thing for you, right?" This simple action sends a clear message, "I'm listening. Your words matter." And that generates a sense of respect and recognition that strengthens your influence. The big mistake many salespeople make is listening only to respond instead of listening to understand. Listening to respond means you're already thinking about your next line while the other person is talking. Listening to understand means focusing completely on what the other person is expressing, through both words and emotions. When you adopt the second mindset, your answers stop being generic and start being specific and relevant to that client. And in sales, that's the difference between a "I'll think about it" and a "You convinced me." Active listening also protects you from offering the wrong solutions. Many times, a client rejects a product not because it's bad, but because it doesn't meet their real need, and that need was never discovered because the salesperson was too busy talking about features instead of listening to problems. When you listen carefully, you can adjust your pitch in real time, focusing on what the client truly values. This turns the sale into a personalized experience, which is exactly what today's customers want. Finally, active listening gives you an emotional advantage. It helps you connect with the client as a person, not just a transaction. This is key, because people don't just buy products or services, they buy experiences and relationships. If a client feels that you listen and understand them better than others, they will choose to stay with you, even if your price isn't the lowest. Because trust and connection are worth more than any discount. So, if you want to sell without talking too much, start training your ability to listen. Practice silence, validate emotions, reflect ideas, and pay attention to all communication, verbal and nonverbal. Every time a client feels that you truly listened, you'll have gained a level of influence far more powerful than any polished argument. Selling without talking too much is not about speaking less out of fear. It's about speaking less because you listen more, and therefore say exactly what the client needs to hear. Chapter number 7. Body language that inspires trust. Body language is a silent yet decisive factor in sales. You can have the best pitch in the world, the most irresistible offer, and the most sophisticated persuasion strategy, but if your body sends signals of insecurity, disinterest, or dishonesty, the client will pick up on it immediately, often unconsciously, and will become suspicious. Because before they listen to your words, people read you. Their brain analyzes your posture, gestures, eye contact, and tone of voice, and determines whether what you say matches what you project. That's why body language is such a powerful tool to inspire trust, create connection, and project credibility without saying a single word. When you walk into a sales meeting or welcome a client, your body is already communicating something. A slouched posture, dropped shoulders, or hidden hands can signal insecurity or nervousness. On the other hand, standing tall, shoulders slightly back, and feet firmly grounded convey confidence and openness. The goal is not to exaggerate or appear artificial, but to align your body language with your inner attitude of service and confidence in your product or service. If you truly believe in what you're offering, your body should naturally reflect it. One of the most powerful elements of body language is eye contact. Firm, steady eye contact, without being intrusive, demonstrates honesty and confidence. Many people avoid looking directly into someone's eyes out of nervousness or fear of seeming aggressive, but the key is balance. Look long enough to show interest and respect, but alternate with natural pauses to avoid coming across as intimidating. When a client speaks and you maintain receptive eye contact, you send the silent message, "I hear you, I'm with you, your opinion matters." A smile is another essential tool. A genuine smile generates an immediate positive response in the client's brain, activating feelings of warmth and connection. It's not about smiling all the time in a forced way, but about using a natural smile at the right moment. When greeting, acknowledging a positive comment, or closing a deal. A sincere smile communicates openness, trust, and warmth, and often opens more doors than any elaborate argument. Hand gestures also play an important role. Visible hands convey honesty, while hidden hands in pockets or behind your back create the impression that you're hiding something. Using open and relaxed gestures while speaking reinforces the credibility of your words, whereas nervous habits, like constantly touching your face or fiddling with objects, can undermine professionalism. A simple guideline: use your hands to emphasize key points, but avoid distracting exaggerations that make you look like you're performing. Your overall posture should project confidence and readiness. Leaning slightly forward when the client speaks shows interest. Keeping your torso upright and feet firmly planted demonstrates stability and security. Conversely, closed postures, such as crossed arms or hunched shoulders, can suggest resistance or lack of openness. This becomes especially important when a client voices doubts or objections. If your body appears defensive, you reinforce their sense of risk. If instead your posture remains open and receptive, the client feels more comfortable expressing genuine concerns. Another crucial aspect is the alignment between your verbal and nonverbal communication. You might say, "I'm completely confident in this product," but if your tone is weak, your eyes avoid contact, and your posture collapses, the client will trust your body language more than your words. That's why, before each sales interaction, it's important to check your emotional state. If you're stressed, anxious, or unmotivated, your body will show it. A useful practice is to do a quick physical and mental reset before each meeting. Take a deep breath, relax your shoulders, smile, and visualize a positive outcome. This simple ritual aligns your body with your intention to serve and sell confidently. A practical example: a real estate agent with strong technical knowledge struggled to close deals because clients sensed insecurity. His slouched posture and nervous gestures didn't match his words of confidence about the properties. After receiving body language training, he adopted a more upright stance, improved his eye contact, and learned to use his hands to reinforce explanations. Within 3 months, his closings increased by 35%. Not because he changed what he said, but because what he said now matched what his body conveyed. Body language also allows you to exert influence without speaking. For example, simply nodding when a client mentions a problem creates a sense of agreement and understanding. Subtly mirroring some of the client's gestures, like their posture or breathing rhythm, a technique known as mirroring, creates a subconscious sense of affinity. Of course, this must be done naturally, not mechanically, otherwise it may seem fake. The key is genuine empathy. When you truly care about the person in front of you, your body language aligns naturally. Remember, the client is constantly reading your body, even when you're silent. From the very first greeting to the final goodbye, every movement communicates something. That's why, when welcoming a client, you should appear open. A firm handshake, a slight forward lean, a warm smile. During the conversation, maintain a receptive posture, avoid distractions like checking your phone or watch, and use gestures that reinforce your message. When closing, maintain eye contact, smile, and speak with a confident, warm tone so the client's final impression is one of trust and satisfaction. The body doesn't lie. You can prepare the best pitch, but if your body language contradicts it, the client will notice. Mastering body language is not about acting, but about developing internal coherence. Believing in what you offer, genuinely wanting to help the client, and projecting that through every gesture, glance, and posture. When you achieve that coherence, your very presence inspires trust. And in sales, trust is what opens the door to everything else. Chapter number 8. Objections. When the client is truly interested. For many salespeople, objections are the most dreaded moment in a sales conversation. Hearing a client say, "But, it's just that," or "I'm not sure," can trigger nervousness or the feeling that the sale is slipping away. However, the reality is completely different. An objection is a sign of interest, not rejection. If the client had no intention of considering your product or service, they would simply say, "No, thank you," and end the conversation. The fact that they raise a doubt, a fear, or a condition means they are seriously processing the possibility of buying, but need clarity, reassurance, or one more reason to take the next step. Seeing an objection as an opportunity rather than a threat is an essential mindset shift. When a client tells you, "I like it, but it's expensive," what they are really expressing is not an absolute refusal but an invitation to prove why the value of your product justifies the investment. When they say, "I'm not sure this will work for me," they are really saying, "Show me that I can trust you and your solution." Every "but" is a half-open door that, if you know how to handle it calmly and professionally, can turn into a closed deal and, more importantly, a long-term relationship built on trust. Anticipating objections is one of the most effective strategies to gain confidence and handle these situations naturally. Before each sales meeting, ask yourself, what doubts or resistance might this client have? Are they likely to question the price, the implementation time, the warranty, or comparisons with a competitor? By preparing clear and solid answers in advance, you reduce the chance of being caught off guard when objections arise. You can even get ahead during your presentation by saying, "You might be wondering why our price is a bit higher than other options, and the reason is that we include permanent support and personalized training, which saves you hidden costs later on." By mentioning the objection before the client raises it, you demonstrate honesty and confidence, two elements that immediately build trust. The most common objections usually revolve around price, timing, competition, or confidence in the product. Each requires a different approach. In the case of price, for example, the right technique is not to enter a discount war but to demonstrate value. If a client says, "It's too expensive," instead of coldly defending the number, you might respond, "I understand you want to make sure this is a good investment. Let me show you how this product will save you more than you invest within 6 months." This turns the objection into a constructive dialogue where the client focuses on benefits, not the immediate cost. When the objection is about timing, now is not the right moment. The goal is to uncover the real reason behind it. Often the client feels that postponing is safer, but at the root of that feeling is fear of change or lack of information. A good response would be, "I understand. Sometimes it feels like the timing is never perfect. What would need to happen for you to feel this is the right moment?" With this question, you invite them to express their true conditions for moving forward. Another powerful technique to handle objections without confrontation is to validate first and respond later. If a client says, "I need to think about it," avoid answering with pressure or frustration. Instead, validate their concern, "I completely understand. This is an important decision and deserves time to evaluate." Then ask a question that allows you to keep the conversation going. What aspect would you like to analyze in more detail to feel confident? This way, you turn an "I need to think about it" into an opportunity to uncover specific doubts and resolve them on the spot. Here's a real example. A business consulting salesperson constantly faced the objection, "We already have a current provider." Instead of trying to attack the competitor or push a decision, she began responding with, "That's excellent. You're already working with someone, which shows you value these kinds of solutions. Could you share what you like most about your current provider?" By listening, she identified areas where her service offered added value without directly confronting the competitor. Many times, the client themselves acknowledged limitations with their current provider and opened the door to a complementary or replacement proposal. Another crucial element in handling objections is emotional calm. If you react with nervousness or defensiveness, the client will perceive insecurity and increase their resistance. That's why the first response to any objection must be internal. Breathe, listen fully to the client, nod, and show openness. A simple, "I understand your point," said calmly, creates a safe environment where the client feels comfortable expressing doubts without pressure. It's also important to recognize that many objections are rooted more in emotion than logic. When a client says, "I'm not sure about you," what they may be feeling is fear of making a mistake, fear of being deceived, or fear of making a poor decision. In those cases, more than technical arguments, what they need is emotional reassurance. That's why tools like testimonials from satisfied clients, satisfaction guarantees, and concrete examples of results can be far more persuasive than any cold data. A final technique you must master is the positive bridge. This consists of taking the client's objection and using it as a connection point to highlight your value proposition. For example, if the client says, "It's too expensive," you could respond, "Precisely because it's an investment, we want to make sure you get maximum value. That's why we include unlimited support and free updates, so you'll never have to worry about additional costs." Instead of fighting against the objection, you use it as a springboard to reinforce your sales argument. Handled properly, objections strengthen the client relationship. Every doubt clarified, every fear addressed, every condition resolved increases the perception of your professionalism and commitment. The client doesn't just walk away with a product or service, but with the experience of being heard, understood, and supported. And that experience, beyond price or competition, is what creates loyal clients and constant referrals. So, change your mindset. An objection is not an obstacle, it is a golden opportunity to demonstrate your service capability, your product knowledge, and your commitment to the client. Learn to anticipate them, receive them calmly, and respond with clarity and empathy. Because when a client says, "But," what they are really saying is, "Help me trust enough to say yes." Chapter number 9. Foolproof strategies to close the sale with confidence. Closing a sale is, for many, the most critical and at the same time the most feared moment in the sales process. It doesn't matter if you've given a flawless presentation, answered every objection with mastery, and connected emotionally with the client. If you don't close with confidence, you risk leaving all that effort without results. However, closing doesn't have to feel like an act of pressure or a leap into the void. When done correctly, it is perceived as the natural consequence of a good conversation. That's why this chapter is focused on teaching you how to identify the exact moment to close and giving you concrete strategies to do it in a professional, ethical, and effective way. The first step to closing with confidence is detecting the exact moment. Many salespeople rush and try to close too early, when the client still has doubts, which generates resistance and the feeling of being pressured. Others, on the contrary, wait too long, lose the momentum of the conversation, and let the client's enthusiasm cool down. So how do you detect that middle point? There are verbal and non-verbal signals that indicate the client is ready. Among the verbal signals are phrases such as, "How long would it take to arrive? Does this come with a warranty? What would the payment process look like?" These questions show that the client is already visualizing the purchase. Non-verbal signals include a change in posture, the client leaning forward, nodding more often, a more relaxed expression, or even taking the product or reviewing contract details on their own initiative. If you learn to read these signals, you'll know when to take the step with confidence, without feeling like you're pushing the client. One of the most effective strategies is the soft close. This type of closing consists of asking a question or making a comment that naturally leads to action without the client feeling pressured. For example, "Would you like to receive it at your office this Thursday or next Monday?" Or, "Do you prefer to start with the basic plan and then upgrade to the advanced one when you feel ready?" This type of close doesn't demand a yes or no decision, but instead assumes the purchase and only asks the client to choose a minor detail, which reduces resistance. Another useful type is the direct close, used when the client is already clearly convinced and just needs a small push. An example would be, "Perfect, then let's proceed with the registration right now so you can get started as soon as possible." This close works because it avoids prolonging a decision the client has already made mentally. The longer you wait, the more opportunities the client has to second-guess themselves. There's also the conditional close, which is very powerful when the client has a specific objection that isn't fully resolved yet. For example, "If we include this additional benefit, would you be ready to move forward today?" This type of close not only helps advance the process but also makes clear the condition the client needs in order to feel secure. A fundamental technique is making the close feel like a natural consequence. This means the client should perceive that the purchase isn't a sudden leap, but the logical conclusion of a conversation where their needs were heard and addressed. To achieve this, you must establish from the beginning that you're there to help, not to pressure. If you've asked the right questions, listened actively, and handled objections with empathy, closing becomes almost an act of service. Since we've already identified that this will solve the problem you mentioned, the next step would be to confirm the order so you can get started as soon as possible. Does that sound good? A practical example. A business software consultant followed a clear process with each client. First, he listened to their challenges, then he showed how the tool solved each one, and finally, he closed with a soft question. "Since we saw how this can save you around 10 hours a week, would you like to begin the implementation this month?" Almost every client responded positively because the close felt natural, not imposed. Another key element to closing with confidence is the emotional energy of the moment. If your tone of voice when closing is insecure, hesitant, or overly aggressive, you can break the connection you've built. The ideal tone is firm but warm, projecting confidence without seeming domineering. Your body language should also align. Steady eye contact, a slight smile, and an open posture. The client perceives your confidence, and that creates a sense of security to move forward. A common mistake is talking too much after making the closing proposal. Many salespeople ask, "So, shall we move forward with this plan?" And when the client pauses in silence to think, the salesperson rushes to fill the gap, trying to keep talking. That impulse can come across as desperation and ruin the moment. The key is to ask for the close and remain silent. That silence is powerful. It gives the client the time to process and make their decision without feeling pushed. For some clients, closing is more emotional than rational, which is why tools such as customer testimonials or small additional guarantees can make a big difference. For example, "I understand that you want to be completely sure, That's why we include a 30-day full money-back guarantee. Would you like us to finalize everything today so you can start risk-free? Statements like this reduce the perception of risk and make the decision feel safer. Finally, it's important to understand that closing isn't the end of the relationship but the beginning. When the client feels that you guided them through the entire process with respect, clarity, and empathy, the close becomes a positive experience that increases the chances of referrals and future purchases. That's why even if the client doesn't make a decision right away, you should end the interaction with gratitude and openness. I completely understand. Please take all the time you need. In the meantime, I'll send you a summary with the key points so you can review them at your own pace. Would it be okay if we touch base again on Thursday to clear up any questions that may come up? That professional attitude leaves an impression of trust and service that keeps the door open for a future yes. So, closing the sale with confidence is the result of reading the client's signals well, using the right strategy for each situation, and projecting confidence without pressure. Once you master this art, closing stops being a struggle and becomes the natural outcome of the value you delivered during the conversation. Chapter number 10. Perceived value. Sell benefits, not features. One of the main reasons why many salespeople struggle with pricing, objections, and closing sales is because they focus on selling features instead of benefits. Features are important, of course. They describe what the product or service is, what it's made of, what technology it uses, or what processes it follows. But what truly drives the customer to buy is not what the product is, but what the product does for them. Put another way, a customer doesn't buy a drill because they want a drill. They buy it because they want a perfect hole in the wall to hang the picture of their dreams. They don't buy an online course because they love watching videos. They buy it because they want a result, a better career, a higher income, or a new skill that allows them to live better. That's why a professional salesperson learns to translate every feature into a tangible and emotional benefit. If you're selling a smartphone with a 48-megapixel camera, the feature is the megapixel count. The benefit is that the customer can capture memories in professional quality and preserve them for a lifetime. If you're selling business management software, the feature might be its intuitive interface. The benefit is that the customer and their team can save hours of work each week and reduce the stress of manual administration. It's this connection between the product and the customer's life that elevates perceived value. And perceived value is the real driver behind the buying decision. One of the great secrets of professional selling is that value doesn't lie in the product itself, but in the customer's perception. And that perception can be elevated without lowering the price, as long as you clearly demonstrate how your solution positively impacts their life. For example, a personal trainer isn't just selling training sessions. They're selling the feeling of having more energy, regaining confidence in one's body, feeling healthier, and becoming more attractive. If the customer perceives that outcome as valuable, price becomes secondary. So when a customer says, "It's too expensive," what they're really saying is, "I don't see enough value to justify the price." The solution is not to offer a discount immediately, but to raise the perception of value by showing how your product transforms their experience, their business, or their life. An effective strategy to increase perceived value is to use real transformation stories. If you're selling a digital marketing service, don't just say, "We improve companies' online visibility." Tell the story of a small business that doubled its sales in 6 months thanks to your strategies, allowing its owner to hire more employees and secure their children's education. Stories make the benefit concrete and emotional, and that makes them far more powerful than any list of technical features. Another method is to show the relationship between cost and benefit. For example, if your software costs $200 per month but saves your client's team 20 hours of work, those 20 hours could be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars in recovered productivity. Framing the investment in terms of return, rather than expense, completely changes the conversation. This applies in personal contexts too. A personal development program may cost $500, but if the customer perceives that it will help them earn a promotion with a significant salary increase, the perceived value multiplies. Remember, the customer buys solutions, not objects. They don't buy a mattress for the materials it's made of, but because they want better sleep, more energy, and improved quality of life. They don't buy an insurance policy for its detailed clauses, but because they want peace of mind and protection for their family. That's why, when presenting your product, you should always ask yourself, how does this improve my customer's life? Each time you answer that question with clarity and emotion, you'll be selling benefits instead of features. A practical example. A car salesman used to focus on technical features like engine size, horsepower, and trunk capacity. After receiving training, he shifted his focus toward benefits. This vehicle will give you peace of mind knowing your family is protected with its advanced safety systems. Or, the low fuel consumption will allow you to save money each month and use it for other important things in your life. His sales increased significantly, not because the car changed, but because the customer now perceived a much higher value. Elevating perceived value also means showing how your product or service solves emotional problems, not just functional ones. Many buying decisions are driven by the desire to avoid pain or gain pleasure. A cosmetic treatment isn't purchased just for physical improvement, but for the confidence and self-esteem it brings. A public speaking course isn't purchased just to learn speaking techniques, but to overcome stage fright and open new professional opportunities. When you connect with those emotions, the customer feels your product is not an expense, but an investment in their well-being and happiness. Finally, it's crucial that you yourself believe in the value of what you offer. If you doubt whether your product truly transforms lives, your body language and tone of voice will reveal it, and the customer will sense it. That's why one of the most powerful exercises you can do is to list all the real benefits your product provides and constantly remind yourself that you're helping, not pressuring. When you see the value clearly, you can communicate it with confidence and conviction, and that conviction is contagious. In summary, selling benefits instead of features means shifting the focus from what the product has to what the customer gains. It's about elevating perceived value by showing impact, transformation, and real results. Once you master the skill, you stop competing on price and start competing on value. And in that space, customers are willing to pay more, trust more, and return again and again because they feel what you offer truly improves their lives. Chapter number 11. Personalization. Make the customer feel unique. In a world where customers are constantly exposed to generic advertising, mass messages, and standard solutions, personalization has become the key to standing out and building genuine trust. Today, customers want to feel that you listen to them, that you understand their unique situation, and that your product or service was designed specifically for them. That's why personalization is not a luxury, but an essential sales strategy. When a customer feels that your proposal is tailored to their needs and not just a copy of what you offer everyone else, the perceived value increases exponentially, price resistance decreases, and loyalty strengthens. Personalization begins with the ability to listen and observe. You cannot adapt your message unless you first know who is on the other side of the conversation. This requires asking open-ended questions that help you discover what truly matters to the customer. What would you like to improve with this solution? What is the biggest challenge you face in your business today? What do you hope to achieve with this investment? When you listen attentively and take note of every detail, you gather the insights necessary to make your proposal deeply resonate. A common mistake many salespeople make is using the same pitch for all customers. For example, if you sell a management system and always give the same presentation regardless of whether your audience is a small business owner, an operations manager, or a CFO, you're making a mistake. Each of them has different priorities. The owner thinks about reducing costs and increasing profitability. The operations manager thinks about efficiency and error reduction. The CFO thinks about ROI and long-term planning. If you deliver the same speech to all, maybe one will connect, but the other two will think you didn't understand their needs. Personalization means adapting your message to each type of customer so that they perceive, this is just for me. One powerful technique for personalization is mirroring language. This means using some of the same words, expressions, or tone that the customer uses. If the customer says, we need something that gives us speed because we're losing time, you might respond, I understand. So you're looking for a solution that gives you speed and reduces those time losses you mentioned. By reflecting their language, the customer feels understood and aligned with you. But beware, this is not about artificial or exaggerated imitation, but about showing active listening and adapting to their communication style. Another key tool is segmentation. Not all your customers are the same, even if they buy the same type of product. If you can identify different market segments, for example, large versus small companies, first-time buyers versus repeat customers, people who buy out of necessity versus for status, you can adjust your approach more precisely. For instance, a status-driven customer doesn't just want a functional product, they want to feel special when acquiring it. In this case, you should emphasize exclusivity or limited editions. On the other hand, a customer buying out of urgent necessity is looking for speed and immediate solutions, so you should focus on delivery times, guarantees, and after-sales support. Personalization can also be supported by technology. Today, tools like CRM, customer relationship management, allow you to record key customer data, purchase history, preferences, birthdays, previous interactions. Using this information in conversations makes a huge difference. For example, I know you purchased our basic package last year and mentioned wanting to expand your business. This year we have an advanced version that's a perfect fit for that growth. The customer feels known, remembered, and cared for in their specific situation. But personalization goes beyond tailoring your pitch. It extends to the entire customer experience. From how you greet the customer to how you deliver the product or service, every detail should reflect individual attention. If you send a follow-up email, don't make it the same generic text for everyone, "Thank you for your purchase." Instead, mention something specific from your conversation. "I'm glad you found our time-saving feature useful, as you mentioned that was your priority. I'll follow up in a few days to ensure you're getting that result." It's a small detail, but it creates a strong emotional impact. A clear example of the importance of personalization can be seen in the luxury industry. Luxury brands don't just sell high-quality products. They sell exclusive experiences that make customers feel unique. From engraving initials on an accessory to offering personalized in-store service, every action reinforces the message, "This was made with you in mind." That feeling is so powerful that many people are willing to pay much more for what they perceive as a personalized experience. Personalization is also fundamental for building emotional affinity. When a customer feels understood, a connection is formed that goes beyond a commercial transaction. They become someone who trusts you and your brand, opening the door to loyalty and referrals. Many businesses survive not because they are the cheapest or have the best technology, but because they make each customer feel important and unique. A restaurant that remembers a customer's favorite dish, or an advisor who congratulates a client's child on their birthday, creates a lasting emotional impact that no generic competitor can match. Finally, personalization is a form of respect. You're telling the customer, "You're not just another number. Your situation matters to me, and I'm taking the time to serve you in a special way." And that sense of importance has a profound effect on purchase decisions and long-term relationships. Because at the end of the day, we all want to feel listened to, understood, and valued. In summary, making the customer feel unique requires observing, listening, and adapting every part of your communication. It's not a complex act nor reserved for large companies. Anyone can do it, as long as they genuinely want to know their customer and spend a little time tailoring their proposal. When you succeed in personalizing both your message and the experience, you don't just close more sales. You build strong relationships and customers who choose you not because you're the cheapest, but because you're the one who understands them best. Chapter number 12. The Silent Sale. The Power of Recommendation and Testimonial. One of the most powerful principles in sales is understanding that many times you don't need to tell the client how great you are, because others can do it for you with much greater impact. This phenomenon is called social proof, and it is one of the most influential drivers of human decision-making. People trust the experiences of others because they feel those opinions are more objective and honest than any argument a salesperson could make. That's why recommendations and testimonials have become tools of silent persuasion, capable of opening doors, eliminating objections, and closing sales with less effort. Think about your own behavior as a consumer. Before buying a product or hiring a service, you probably check reviews, ask friends, or look on social media to see if someone else has already had a positive experience with that option. This behavior is natural because we all want to minimize risks. A client who sees a sincere testimonial from someone in a similar situation perceives less uncertainty and feels more trust. That's why it's said that recommendation is the most effective form of advertising. It's not paid, it's not pushy, and it's backed by real experiences. The power of recommendation lies in transferring credibility from the company or salesperson to the customer who has already purchased. When a prospect hears, "This service helped me double my sales in 3 months," or "Thanks to this product, I now sleep better every night," they don't see it as a sales pitch, but as a genuine experience. In the prospect's mind, the equation changes. It's no longer a salesperson trying to convince them, but a satisfied customer sharing their story. This creates a level of trust no polished speech could ever match. But testimonials don't appear by magic. You have to know how to ask for them and structure them correctly. The most common mistake is asking for vague feedback like, "Could you share a few words about the product?" That usually produces unhelpful responses such as, "It's good," or "I like the service." Instead, it's better to ask specific questions that guide the client toward a useful response. What problem did you have before using our product? What result did you achieve after using it? What would you say to someone who is thinking of buying but still has doubts? This way, you get a testimonial with a clear structure: initial situation, solution, and final result. That type of testimonial is more believable and persuasive because it tells a story. Another powerful way to obtain testimonials is by offering such a great experience that the client feels compelled to share it on their own. When someone receives more than they expected, they feel a natural urge to recommend it. That's why excellence in customer service is the foundation of any recommendation strategy. If you deliver an average service, people will hardly remember it. But if you surprise your clients with personalized details, post-sale follow-ups, and quick solutions, you'll gain not only satisfied buyers but also brand ambassadors. For example, a small catering company decided to focus on creating memorable experiences beyond just the food. They decorated venues with a unique theme to surprise clients, sent personalized thank you videos after each event, and asked for genuine feedback. The result? More than 70% of their new clients came from recommendations. They didn't invest heavily in advertising because their own customers had become their silent sales force. Recommendations can also be boosted through referral programs. These programs reward customers who bring in new buyers, creating a virtuous cycle. The client feels valued, the new prospect arrives with a trusted recommendation, and the business increases sales. The incentive doesn't have to be expensive. It can be a discount, a gift, or an exclusive extra service. What matters is that the client feels their recommendation is appreciated and recognized. The format of testimonials also matters. Nowadays, video testimonials are extremely powerful because they convey emotions and nonverbal cues, which build more trust. A client telling their story on camera, showing enthusiasm and real results, can influence far more than plain text on a website. However, even written testimonials can be impactful if supported by concrete data. We went from 10 to 25 monthly clients thanks to this tool, has much greater impact than "it helped us a lot." Another key aspect is showing the diversity of experiences. Not all your customers face the same problems or share the same goals. If you showcase testimonials from different profiles, you can connect with more types of prospects. For example, if you sell software, highlight how it helped a small business, a freelancer, and a large corporation. Each of those testimonials speaks to a different market segment, which broadens your reach. And don't forget the power of direct recommendation. Sometimes, traditional word of mouth remains the most powerful channel. When a satisfied client personally recommends your product to a friend, family member, or colleague, the level of trust is so high that the purchase decision can be almost immediate. Many companies have grown enormously thanks solely to direct recommendations, without spending a single dollar on advertising. Finally, remember that silent selling through recommendations and testimonials is more than just a strategy. It's a reflection of the real quality and impact of what you offer. You can't force genuine testimonials if your product doesn't deliver on its promises. That's why the best marketing strategy will always be an excellent product or service, backed by a genuine interest in the customer's success. When you do this, your own clients become your best salespeople, and your business grows in an organic, solid, and sustainable way. In conclusion, let your past clients speak for you. Create memorable experiences, ask for structured testimonials, implement referral programs, and share those stories authentically. Every recommendation is a form of social proof that reduces perceived risk, strengthens trust, and positions you as a reliable choice. When you master the art of silent selling, persuasion stops being an exhausting effort and becomes a natural flow, where your results speak for themselves through the voices of those who already trusted you and achieved success. Chapter number 13. Storytelling that sells. The narrative that connects with the heart. Human beings are wired to connect through stories. Long before writing or modern commerce existed, stories were the way we transmitted knowledge, values, and experiences. A good story has the power to touch deep emotions, awaken empathy, and create an instant connection between the storyteller and the listener. In the world of sales, storytelling becomes a strategic tool because it allows you to move away from the typical cold presentation of features and prices and instead invite the client into an emotional journey where they themselves become the protagonist. The key to effective storytelling in sales is to structure a narrative with purpose. A story that sells is not just a funny or anecdotal tale, but one that connects the client's situation with the transformation your product or service can provide. That's why, before telling a story, you should ask yourself, what does my client want? What problem do they have? What transformation are they hoping to experience? If you know these answers, you can craft a narrative that resonates authentically and powerfully. A classic and very effective structure is the 3-act model: the hero, the problem, and the transformation. In this case, the hero is not you or your company. The hero is your client. The problem is the obstacle they face in their life or business, and the transformation is the result they achieve by using your product or service. For example, if you sell a leadership coaching program, instead of saying, "Our program has 20 high-level modules," you could tell a story like this. 6 months ago, we worked with Juan, a manager who felt overwhelmed by his team, dealing with low motivation and high employee turnover. After working with us, he learned leadership techniques that allowed him to reduce turnover by 40% and improve team results in just 3 months. Today, not only does he lead with greater confidence, but his employees also recognize him as an inspiring leader. In this story, Juan is the hero, the problem is the lack of effective leadership, and the transformation is the success achieved. The reason this structure works is because it generates emotional identification. The prospect listening thinks, "That one could be me." And when they visualize the possible transformation, the product stops being something abstract and becomes a tangible and emotionally desirable solution. To create stories that truly connect, you should gather real experiences from your clients. Ask them, what was happening in your life before acquiring our product? How did you feel? What changed afterward? With these answers, you can build authentic narratives that don't sound like advertising, but rather like genuine human experiences. Even if your product is new and you don't yet have many success stories, you can use scenarios inspired by typical situations your potential clients face, always making it clear that it's a hypothetical but possible case. An essential component of storytelling is emotion. People don't remember lists of features, but they do remember how they felt when hearing a story. That's why you should describe in sensory and emotional detail the hero's initial situation. Maria woke up every morning with anxiety, feeling she had no control over her time or her business. She was tired, frustrated, and afraid of failing. Then emphasize the emotional transformation. Today she feels confident, calm, and certain that every day she moves closer to her goals thanks to our solution. This contrast between before and after not only informs but creates an emotional impact that predisposes the client to take action. Storytelling also allows you to overcome objections indirectly. For example, if a potential client thinks your product is expensive, you could share the story of another client who had the same concern but decided to invest and got a much higher return. Pedro also doubted at first because of the price, but after using our service, he increased his income by 30% in the first month. Today he says it was the best investment of his life. This type of story resolves the objection without confronting the client, because it shows a real result and lets the prospect draw their own conclusion. Moreover, storytelling works across multiple formats. You can use it in a one-on-one conversation, a group sales presentation, a marketing video, or even on social media. What matters is keeping the essence. The client as the hero, a problem they can relate to, and an inspiring transformation. An example of the power of storytelling can be seen in global brands that have mastered this technique. Think of campaigns by Apple, which don't just talk about technical specifications but about creativity, freedom, and lifestyle. Or sports brands that don't simply sell clothing but stories of perseverance and personal effort. These brands have built empires because they understood that people don't buy products, they buy stories they want to identify with. To apply storytelling in your sales process, you can follow a simple exercise. Write 3 different stories that represent 3 types of clients you usually work with. Each story should have a hero, the client, a clear conflict, their problem, and a transformative ending, how your product helped them. Practice telling each one in less than 2 minutes, focusing on emotions and results. Over time, these stories will become a natural part of your pitch, and you'll notice clients responding with more attention, fewer objections, and greater willingness to buy. Finally, remember that the key to effective storytelling is authenticity. Don't make up fake stories or exaggerate results. because that destroys trust. The best stories are real and honest, told with empathy and with the purpose of helping. When you tell a genuine story, the client doesn't just hear your message. They feel it, remember it, and share it. That's why storytelling is much more than a marketing technique. It is a form of human communication that awakens emotions, breaks down barriers, and builds bridges between you and your client. When you master the art of storytelling, you stop selling directly and begin to inspire buying decisions in a natural and powerful way. Chapter number 14. Selling in the Digital Age. Networks, Content, and Automation. The digital era has radically transformed the way we sell. Today, a salesperson doesn't need a physical office, a large storefront, or an in-person sales team to reach thousands of people. All it takes is a mobile phone and an internet connection to access an almost unlimited market. Platforms like Instagram, WhatsApp, TikTok, and YouTube have become powerful channels to generate leads, build trust, and close sales without face-to-face interaction. But this new way of selling has its own rules. It's not just about posting a product and waiting for someone to buy, but about creating a digital experience that connects with the customer, guides them through a clear buying process, and builds a relationship of trust, even without meeting in person. Let's start with Instagram, a platform that is visual by nature. On Instagram, what you're selling is not just your product, but a lifestyle, a feeling, an identity that the customer can relate to. The most successful brands don't just post generic pictures of their products with prices. They showcase the product in use, integrating it into everyday or aspirational scenes. For example, a clothing business doesn't just upload pictures of garments, but shows how they look on real people, in different contexts and combinations, often paired with inspiring quotes or fashion tips. They also use stories and reels to generate daily interaction, answering questions in real time, running polls, and showing behind-the-scenes content. This constant interaction humanizes the brand and makes customers feel there are real people behind the screen. WhatsApp, meanwhile, has become an essential channel for sales and customer loyalty. With WhatsApp Business, you can create product catalogs, automated welcome messages, and quick replies. But beyond technology, what truly matters is personalized service. Calling the customer by name, remembering their purchase history, and sending exclusive offers based on their interests. For instance, a beauty salon can send appointment reminders, seasonal promotions, and follow-up messages after a service. Hi Anna, how did your treatment go? Would you like to book your next one to maintain the results? These details create closeness and trust, making the customer feel cared for, even when the interaction is digital. TikTok and YouTube, on the other hand, are content-driven platforms. Here, the goal isn't to sell directly, but to educate, entertain, and inspire. A fitness business can create short videos with quick routines, nutrition tips, and customer testimonials, while subtly including a call to action at the end. If you want your personalized plan, message us. A tech company can publish tutorials on how to use their devices or explain industry trends, positioning itself as an expert and organically attracting customers. On these platforms, content must be authentic and dynamic, avoiding an overly commercial tone. The goal is to build trust and foster a community that eventually turns into a loyal customer base. One of the most powerful tools in digital sales is the sales funnel. This is the structured process that guides a customer from discovering your brand to making a purchase and eventually becoming a repeat buyer. For example, a funnel may start with an Instagram ad leading to a landing page where the prospect leaves their email in exchange for a free resource, such as an ebook or a discount. Then, through automated emails, the prospect receives valuable content that educates them and builds trust. Finally, they're presented with a specific offer, supported by testimonials and guarantees, to close the sale. But the funnel doesn't end with the purchase. It continues with follow-up messages, satisfaction surveys, and exclusive promotions to build loyalty. The challenge of digital sales is that there is often no physical contact or face-to-face interaction, which can make the process feel cold or impersonal. That's why humanizing the digital experience is crucial. This means using friendly, approachable language, responding quickly, showing the faces and voices behind the brand, and sharing content that highlights values, not just products. For example, showcasing the team, telling the company's story, or sharing real customer experiences helps create an emotional connection. When customers feel there are real people who care about them, they're more likely to buy, return, and recommend your business. Automation is another key element of modern digital sales. Tools like chatbots, automated emails, and message sequences allow businesses to serve hundreds or even thousands of prospects without sacrificing quality. For instance, a chatbot on a website can instantly answer common questions like, "What's the price? How does shipping work?" Or, "Is there a warranty?" This saves time for both the customer and the business. However, the mistake lies in relying exclusively on automation without human oversight. The key is balancing automated processes with strategic human interaction, ensuring that customers still feel personally taken care of. Customer loyalty has also taken on a new approach in the digital era. In the past, loyalty was focused on point cards or discounts. Today, it's about building communities. For example, a business can create an exclusive WhatsApp or Telegram group where members receive tips, updates, and promotions before the general public, making them feel part of something special. Social networks also allow businesses to create spaces for customer interaction, such as Facebook groups or private forums, where people can share experiences and advice, strengthening their connection to the brand. Another essential aspect of digital selling is data analysis. Each platform provides metrics about who sees your content, who interacts, and who buys. This allows you to constantly optimize strategies. If you notice a type of post generates more engagement, you can replicate that format. If you discover a specific audience segment buys more, you can focus your ad budget on them. Digital selling is not static. It's a process of trial, error, and continuous improvement. In summary, selling in the digital age means adapting to new platforms, creating valuable content, using automation wisely, and above all, humanizing every interaction. Even if your customer never meets you face-to-face, you can still convey trust, closeness, and professionalism with the right tools and a genuine focus on helping them. Technology is the bridge, but emotional connection remains the destination. When you combine the best of both worlds, the massive reach of digital with the warmth of human attention, you hold in your hands one of the most powerful and scalable ways to sell in history. Chapter number 15, The Client as an Ally. Loyalty, upselling, and community. The sale doesn't end when the client pays. In fact, that's when the opportunity begins to build a long-term relationship that can generate far more value than a single transaction. Many salespeople make the mistake of thinking their job ends with the close, but the best professionals know that true success lies in turning every client into a strategic ally, someone who not only buys again, but also recommends, defends, and promotes your brand. In a competitive market where every buyer has countless options, loyalty becomes the key to sustainable growth and to standing out from those who only chase quick sales. The first step toward loyalty is delivering a positive buying experience that exceeds expectations. It's not just about providing the promised product or service, but doing so with a level of attention that surprises the client. For example, a simple personalized thank you note, a follow-up message asking how their purchase is working out, or a practical guide on how to get the most out of the product can make the difference between an indifferent client and a loyal one. These small gestures create a sense of care and commitment that deeply impacts the buyer's perception. Post-sale follow-up is essential. Many companies forget about the client after closing the deal, leaving space for competitors to lure them with new offers. On the other hand, when you follow up proactively, you show that your interest doesn't end with the transaction. For instance, if you sold electronic equipment, you could call a week later to make sure everything is working properly or send an email with maintenance tips. This not only builds trust but also opens the door to discovering new needs. I see you're using the product well. Would you be interested in learning about an advanced version that could optimize your work even more? This is where upselling comes in, a strategy that allows you to offer the client something additional or superior to what they already purchased, as long as it provides real value to them. When done right, upselling isn't pushy or uncomfortable. It's a natural extension of the relationship with the client. A classic example happens in restaurants. If you'd like, you can pair your dish with a special wine that perfectly complements this recipe. Another example is in software. With the premium plan, you'll have access to advanced tools that will save you even more time. In every case, the key is ensuring the client perceives the recommendation as something designed to improve their experience, not just as a way to increase the seller's profit. Another powerful strategy to turn clients into allies is building a community. Today, clients don't just want to buy products. They want to be part of something bigger, a group of people with shared interests, values, and experiences. For example, a cycling company might organize group rides, create an online forum, or produce educational content about training and bike care. This not only strengthens loyalty among existing clients, but also attracts new prospects who want to join that collective experience. A community creates a sense of belonging that makes leaving your brand feel like losing an important connection, not just switching products. Satisfied clients also become your best salespeople. Their testimony is more credible than any advertising campaign, and their recommendations have enormous impact because they're backed by personal experience. But for a client to recommend you, they must first feel that you care about their success. That's why maintaining high-quality service, answering questions quickly, solving problems efficiently, and treating every interaction with respect and kindness is essential. When the client feels they can trust you, they'll speak highly of you without even being asked. To encourage these recommendations, you can create referral programs that reward clients for bringing in new customers. These programs don't need to be expensive. Sometimes a small discount, a symbolic gift, or exclusive access to a special service is enough to motivate a client to spread the word. The important thing is that they feel their contribution is valued and recognized. Follow-up and loyalty not only generate more sales but also reduce costs. Acquiring a new client is usually much more expensive than keeping an existing one. Furthermore, a returning client tends to spend more over time, because they already trust the brand and are open to exploring new products or services. That's why companies that prioritize long-term relationships are often more profitable and stable, even during economic downturns. A great example of loyalty done right can be seen in brands that create membership programs with exclusive benefits, early access to new products, personalized educational content, or premium services. These initiatives not only keep clients buying but also foster a sense of exclusivity that strengthens the emotional bond with the brand. In conclusion, the true goal of a professional salesperson is not to close a sale, but to open a relationship. Every client is an opportunity to build a bridge that, over time, can become a highway of recurring revenue, constant referrals, and exponential growth. Loyalty, upselling, and community building are the tools that transform a client into a strategic ally and a natural ambassador of your business. When you achieve this, you no longer need to desperately chase new prospects. Your own client base will attract them for you. Conclusion: Sales Mastery. The path of the professional salesperson. Reaching the end of this journey does not mean finishing a process, but opening a new and much deeper one. Throughout these hours, we have discovered that selling is not just a technical skill, nor a talent reserved for a few with the so-called gift of gab. Selling is a human act, a bridge between needs and solutions, between dreams and realities. It is not about closing more sales, but about opening more relationships. True mastery in sales does not lie in accumulating transactions, but in creating bonds that transform the client's life and, as a consequence, your own. When we understand this, our perspective changes completely. We no longer see people as numbers on a report, but as human beings with stories, emotions, aspirations, and fears. Every sale is an opportunity to listen, serve, and guide, not to pressure or manipulate. The best salespeople in the world share a common quality. They put the client at the center and act with a purpose that goes far beyond money. Yes, selling can enrich your bank account, but more importantly, it can enrich your life, your relationships, and your impact on the world. Excellence in sales becomes a way of life when you decide to integrate the skills you have learned. Active listening, genuine empathy, the ability to ask the right questions, the capacity to handle objections without conflict, the mastery of storytelling, the use of technology with a human touch, and the vision of loyalty as a growth strategy. These are not tools you pull out only when it's time to make a sale. They are attitudes and habits that permeate your daily life. When you master the art of communicating with clarity, inspiring trust, and generating solutions, you are not only a better salesperson, you become a better leader, a better colleague, a better friend, a better partner, a better person. Selling is serving with purpose. Every product or service you offer must carry the intention of improving the life of the one who receives it. Think of the great salespeople in history. They didn't just place products in the market. They changed behaviors, democratized technologies, enabled lifestyles, and gave access to opportunities that didn't exist before. Inspiring action, provoking change, and leaving a mark are the results of those who understand that every sale is, at its core, an act of contribution. That is why true sales mastery is not found in isolated techniques, but in mindset. You can memorize closing scripts, rehearse objections, and practice the perfect pitch, but if your purpose is not genuine, the client will sense it. On the other hand, when your purpose is clear and your commitment is real, even with technical mistakes, people will trust you because the energy you transmit is authentic. Authenticity sells more than any memorized script. By mastering the art of selling, you don't just change your financial situation. You change your world. You discover that you can open doors that once seemed closed, create opportunities you had never imagined, and build relationships that enrich every aspect of your life. Yes, you sell a product, but you also sell hope, solutions, and transformations. Every sales conversation can be the beginning of something much greater than a transaction. It can be the starting point of a shared success story between you and your client. In this new stage of your professional journey, commit not only to applying the techniques you've learned, but to perfecting them through experience, analysis, and continuous improvement. Observe what works, adjust what doesn't, and never stop learning. Sales, like any art, requires constant practice. Every client you serve will be a teacher who teaches you something new. About communication, about human behavior, about empathy, and often about yourself. Let this sales mastery be more than a set of tools. Let it become your philosophy of life. Because when you decide to serve with purpose, to positively impact others, and to act with integrity, success becomes an inevitable consequence. Today, a path full of possibilities lies before you. New clients to meet, new relationships to nurture, new opportunities to seize. Always remember, selling is not pushing, it's guiding. It's not pressuring, it's inspiring. It's not manipulating, it's transforming. And when you become a professional who understands this, not only do you grow, your clients grow, your teams grow, your environment grows, and ultimately, the world around you grows. Because every sale with purpose is a seed of change, and you are the sower. So, if this audiobook has inspired you and you're ready to continue deepening your personal growth and inner transformation, I invite you to discover another revealing audiobook that will change the way you see the world, your decisions, and your potential. Click now, and I'll meet you there.